Hello, my dear listeners. Welcome back to my small cozy channel. I'm glad you are back, so let's start. I guess I shouldn't have been snooping. I thought I was just being a bit insensitive, invading my wife's privacy. I had the best of intentions, at least that's what I told myself when I found her diaries. I thought if I read a little bit of them I would learn some secret desire she had. Something that would allow me to get her the perfect 15th anniversary gift. Well, what I found did eventually give me an idea for her anniversary gift. It just took me a while to put it together. It took me quite a while, nearly a full 5 years. I guess I should fill in some of the backstory. Sandy and I, James, were high school sweethearts. We were deeply in love and discovered the joys of sex at an early age. Unfortunately, we were a little slow in learning about contraception, and Sandy got pregnant in the spring of our senior year. Our parents were not happy with us and took us out of town to be married in a very quiet civil service, attended by the 4 parents and the 2 of us. Even though we were both 18, if the school had found out, we both would have been expelled, so we hid the pregnancy until graduation. Not the most fantastic beginning for a marriage, but we were excited about the baby make that babies, yes, with an S twins, one of each. Luckily, Sandy's father was able to get me a job on his construction crew, so I was able to modestly provide for my new wife and children. In time, I became the crew leader, which gave us enough money to afford a nice house in a working-class neighborhood. I worked long hours and Sandy spent all her time caring for our children. We didn't have much time to ourselves. Our social life was limited to kid functions, except for the occasional times our parents took the kids overnight. We had busy lives, but we maintained a reasonably active sex life. I took classes during the slower winter months, and eventually earned an associate's degree in business management. When the kids entered middle school, I was promoted to a regional manager position. Things got much easier for us financially, and my hours became a little more regular. The only drawback was I had to travel to the home office for some manager meetings. That usually meant I was gone 3 to 4 days every other month. With the kids being older, Sandy decided to get a realtor's license, and was hired by Henderson Realty, who listed several of the spec houses we built. They were a large firm, and Sandy did showings for them. She didn't make a lot of money, but she enjoyed the work, even though it meant she often worked odd hours. The summer before the twins were to start their freshman year of high school, Sandy and I were approaching our 15th wedding anniversary. I had been saving money to do something special for her, but just couldn't think of anything special to get her. One Saturday afternoon, the kids were gone and Sandy had a showing, so I was home alone. I was getting desperate to come up with something special, so I thought I'd look through her closet and jewelry items, in the hope of finding inspiration of some sort. I looked at her outfits and just didn't have a clue what she might need or want. Then I decided to check out her jewelry box. What she had was pretty modest, and I thought maybe a nice diamond tennis bracelet would do the trick. As I was putting her jewelry box back into the drawer, it kinda stuck, and I realized there was something in the back of the drawer preventing the box from going back in completely. I dug around and pulled out 3 small books. Each book was nicely bound and had a small flap and lock to secure them. I stared at the books and it dawned on me that they must be her diaries. I never knew she kept a diary. I had never seen her writing in it, and she had never spoken of them. That should have told me they were very personal, and I shouldn't mess with them, but curiosity had always been one of my weaknesses. And besides, maybe it will give me a great idea for her gift. Yeah, that's the rationalization I used when I cracked open her private diaries and began reading. It appeared she had started them when the kids were about 2, and much of the first 2 books were just recaps of important childhood events and not much else. The 3rd book was much more recent and talked of her struggles to pass her realtor's exam and landing the job with Henderson. It went on to talk about how nervous she'd been when she did her first showing, and how grateful she was to have Brad Henderson, the owner's son, help her write her first contract and consummate her first sale. Apparently, she worked a lot with Brad because the next several pages of entries were filled with her activities with him. One particular entry caused me to pause. Sandy had written a detailed description of young Mr. Henderson. From her writings I learned he was 24, so nearly 10 years younger than me, tall and very well built, with delicious deep blue eyes and a smile that could melt a girl's panties. What the fuck? I quickly read farther into the book, and my world began to crumble. Checking the dates of her entries, I figured out it took Brad about 6 months to get her into bed, and they fucked several times over the following year. No doubt their affair would have continued, but Brad's grandfather, who owned several vacation resorts on the West Coast, convinced Brad to move out west and become his understudy. Sandy's entries over the last year often lamented the loss of her delicious guilty pleasure. Well, that revelation certainly ended any plans for making our 15th anniversary special. She got a cheap bouquet of flowers, period, no card, no dinner and no sex. Reading her diary clearly showed she had been quite smitten with Brad, and felt no compunction about cheating on me. I had no doubt she would still be gleefully fucking the acid if he hadn't left town. Her cavalier attitude about cheating had me wondering if she was currently looking for a stud to replace Brad. I focused on being supportive of my kids, and let my feelings for the only girl I'd ever loved slowly die. My plan was to stay married to the cheating bitch until the kids left for college. We live in a no-fault state, so there was little I could do to protect myself from the courts. I dumped most of the money we had saved into a tuition account for the kids, knowing that I would be responsible for that anyway. I also began to slowly collect cash and rare coins, and keep them in a safe in a rented fireproof, climate-controlled, storage unit under my brother's name. Periodically, I would check her diaries to see if she had found a new boy toy, but there was never any mention of any new delicious guilty pleasures. She did describe, in great detail, her lust-filled daydreams she had about a few young men she had encountered, but it appeared she never acted on any of those feelings. Most of her entries were just recaps of her work life and the kids' adventures. As the kids prepared to graduate, she wrote of her hopes to travel with me, and finally get to enjoy life with her wonderful, thoughtful, loving husband. She actually wrote those words. I almost puked. The day came to drop off the kids at school and return home as official empty nesters. It had been a tough few years, pretending to care about Sandy. I had shed a lot of tears early on, but gradually hardened my heart. Oh sure, I had continued to fuck the bitch, but it was just that, fucking, never making love. Although her sex life had slowed to a crawl, Sandy was always receptive and sometimes initiated things. Too bad, I really liked fucking her, and even began taking her ass whenever I wanted. I'm not sure she really liked it, but she allowed it. At that point, I didn't care what she liked, I was doing it for my own guilty pleasure, not hers. I had Sandy's big SUV packed to the gills and a ton of crap loaded onto the roof. The kids' campus was about 2 hours away, so we all chatted away as I made the drive. We got the kids delivered and set up in their respective dorms, and got back into the SUV for the drive home. James, can you believe our babies are off to college? My God, it seems like yesterday I was changing their diapers. Yes, those early years just seem to have flown by. It's great to see them so excited about this next phase in their lives. Oh James, I'm pretty excited to begin this next phase in our lives too. Just think about the time we will have to ourselves. I want to travel a little and really enjoy each other. Well, Sandy, I'm very, very excited to begin this new chapter in life. I am truly looking forward to traveling with my beautiful companion to exotic places. Sandy grinned and leaned over and kissed me on the cheek, and then settled back in her seat and drifted off to sleep. Sandy awoke when I pulled into our garage. Oh my, I must have conked out on you there. I can't believe we're home. Yep, you're home, I said as I got out of the car and opened the rear hatch and reached for my 2 suitcases. Sandy frowned at me and said, oh shit, did they forget some of their stuff? Just then a small SUV pulled into our driveway, and an attractive young lady got out and waved to me before opening the rear hatch of her car. Nope, these are my bags, I said as I hefted the bags and carried them to the other vehicle. I stored the bags and kissed the young lady as Sandy stood gaping at us. Sandy, I'm sure you remember Carolyn from my office. She is here to pick me up. We will be back in about 3 weeks. 3 weeks. James, what the hell are you talking about? You never said anything about any business trips. How can you just spring this on me like this? Carolyn stepped up to Sandy and handed her a large envelope. I said, those are the divorce papers. I suggest you have an attorney review them. I think I have been fair, but still, you should get an attorney. Divorce? What the hell do you mean divorce? James, what's this all about? Is this some kind of sick joke? It's no joke. Carolyn and I are leaving for a 2-week cruise, and a week stay at a very romantic island resort. The hell you are. Have you lost your fucking mind? We're married, you can't be running off with this bimbo. She's not a bimbo, in fact it took me years to convince her just to let me kiss her, but she was worth the wait. Now, we have to go, we have a flight to catch. The movers came while we were gone and moved all my stuff to Carolyn's. I've taken half of our cash, and my lawyer will answer any questions you may have. James, please, how can you do this? How can you just leave me? We've had almost 20 years together, doesn't that mean anything to you? She sobbed, tears streaming down her face. Yes, Sandy, it does. I loved you with all my heart for 15 years. I gave you all I had to give, but it just wasn't enough for you. You just had to have your delicious guilty pleasures. Recognition burst onto her face as her hand flew up to her mouth. My diaries. You read my diaries. Oh my God. Oh my God. James, please, it was a mistake. Please, baby, don't do this. Please, I love you. Please, James. I turned to Carolyn and kissed her sweet lips, then looked back at my soon-to-be ex-wife. You had your delicious guilty pleasures. Now it's time for me to have a few of my own. Epilogue. Sandy tried to fight the divorce, and even denied having an affair with Brad, telling everyone I had just lost my mind and run off with some floozy. Fortunately, I had taken the diary with her handwritten confessions, and when I sent photos of it to the kids, they knew she had lied. Despite her attempts to delay it, the divorce eventually went through, costing me a small fortune. By that time, I was living with Carolyn, and she was working hard to keep my spirits up by fucking my brains out. Sandy requested and I agreed to one final conversation when the final divorce papers were signed. She began apologizing to me, I raised a hand to stop her. Then I asked her the only question I wanted answered: why? James, I did it for purely selfish reasons. I was flattered some handsome young hunk wanted me, and I was positive you'd never find out. I never had any feelings for Brad except lust. It was just the whole forbidden fruit thing. He was only the second man I'd ever experienced. The cheating was so naughty and so exciting. I was so caught up in my own pleasures, I never thought about the consequences of getting caught and of hurting you. I'm so embarrassed by what I did and so devastated by what it has cost me. I hope someday you will be able to forgive me. Sandy, you gave me 15 good years and 2 great kids. For that I will always love you. The last few years of our marriage were the worst of my entire life, and for that I will always hate you. Given time, I assume I will eventually work out that conflict and maybe be able to forgive you, but don't hold your breath. I stood and walked out of the conference room. I could hear Sandy sobbing as I left. By the time the kids graduated, I had worked through the pain of her betrayal, thanks mostly to the efforts of my bride Carolyn. We threw a big graduation party for the kids, and Sandy came with her new boyfriend. He seemed like a good guy, and I told Sandy I was happy to see she had moved on. Then I hugged her and told her I had forgiven her. She burst into tears and rushed to the restroom. Carolyn, who had heard everything, wrapped an arm around me and said, "That was a nice thing for you to do, just don't even think about giving her any new guilty pleasures." I laughed and squeezed my bride. "Don't worry, beautiful, your pleasures are the only ones I'm interested in." Okay, this is the end of our story. To be honest, I have no idea how and why he stayed for 5 years, if I read it correctly, with his cheating wife. For kids, I don't know if it's worth it. Now they move to college and have their own lives, but he spent 5 years on this woman. I wouldn't do it, to be honest. Or maybe I'm not strong enough, cause I left my wife right after I understood what happened. What do you think, listeners? Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this story, at least it was entertaining. Thanks to RegGuy69 for this story.